So I want to start off by exploring a fundamental principle that everything that we're going to be exploring is based upon. In fact, I would suggest that everything in NLP is based on this fundamental principle. And that is the idea that as human beings, we do not respond to reality, we respond to our inner perception of reality. In the last video, I mentioned that as a human being, we take in everything through the five senses: sight, sound, taste, touch and smell. But if we were to be consciously aware of all of those things at the one time, then it would completely overwhelm us. We would go absolutely nuts. So our brain does something really quite neat, is it takes all of this stuff and then it filters it down into more manageable chunks, into what we call our map or our model of the world. And at the end of the day, this is all we've got. And it will only ever be an approximation of what reality has to offer. We can't possibly consider or even think about what reality has to offer. It's too much. So we can only ever perceive the world through our map or our model of the world. Sure, we can enrich this map. We can make it larger. We can make it more inclusive of richer and more useful choices. But at the end of the day, it will only ever be an approximation of what reality has to offer. Now, for me, this has profound implications, because what it means is that every single problem or challenge that you face, you will be experiencing it through your own map, through your own approximation. So you won't actually be responding to the reality of the problem, you'll be responding to your perception of the reality of the problem. And that may seem like a small distinction, but it is absolutely crucial. Let me give you a very quick example. I was working with a client a few years ago who had a really terrible phobia of spiders. Every time she thought about a spider, every time you mentioned the word spider, every time she saw a spider, it would just utterly freak her out. Now, of course, if she lived in Australia or someplace in Africa, then that would be a fairly useful phobia to have. I mean, the spiders there are pretty scary, I have to say. But she lived in Scotland in the UK and we don't have any poisonous spiders. So it is very much an irrational fear. Now, when I was speaking to her, she was describing how her phobia worked. And she said to me that it started when she left work after, the day. She was driving back home and all of a sudden she started to imagine that the spiders were all waiting for her in the house. It was almost like they were having some kind of town meeting, kind of like they had like walkie-talkies and they were all speaking to each other and going, okay, Alice is about to come in through the door, let's get together, let's rush her. And this to me, and I'm sure it does to you, just seems absolutely crazy. But she genuinely believed that as soon as she walked in through her front door, all the spiders were going to come out of the nooks and crannies and, I don't know, the little kind of places of her house and basically descend upon her and attack her and do whatever. I have no idea. And this is crazy if you think about it. I'm not saying she's crazy, but it's a crazy notion that she is not responding to reality. Whether you think it is or not, spiders don't have town meetings and don't plot intricately to try to ambush human beings. It just doesn't happen. This was all inside her imagination. And she wasn't responding to what was real, she was responding to her inner perception. But the amazing thing was, and this is something that we all do as human beings, is that she genuinely thought she was responding out of reality. But when we actually uncovered what she was responding to, it was this crazy piece of imagined scenario where spiders were rushing out of all kinds of corners just to ambush her. So this for me is a great example of how the mind tends to work through our subjective experience. All we've got is our map, all we've got is our approximation. And a lot of what we do in NLP is to help you expand your map so that you have new choices, so that you can realise that perhaps the current ones you're responding to aren't particularly accurate, are completely inaccurate. And by expanding your map, you start to gain access to new choices and new ways of thinking and feeling. So again, like I said, this has profound implications because every problem, every challenge you have, you will be facing it and experiencing it through your own perception. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that there aren't real-world consequences. Of course there is. And many people have physical, cultural, socio-economical restrictions that they have to deal with. Of course, those are very real things. But at the end of the day, irrespective of your situation, whether it's good, wonderful, great, bad, ugly, or just absolutely terrible, you will be perceiving it through your own map of the world. You won't be seeing it completely from every single angle. And what that means is you always have choice. This brings the power back to you. You might not be able to control some of the shitty and horrible things that happen in your life, but you can have some influence into how you perceive it inside your mind. Because as human beings, we don't respond to reality, we respond to our inner perceptions of reality. And one of the amazing things about NLP is that it can help you take charge of your inner perceptions. And by taking charge of your inner perceptions, it brings the power back to you. It gives you choice. It gives you something that you can change and you can have some kind of influence over. So this, as I said, is a fundamental idea that I really want you to consider moving forward. And in the next video, we're going to kind of move this on a little bit. And I want to explore human experience in a little bit more depth. And I want to introduce you to a wonderful model. It's a little bit oversimplified, but I think it's massively useful to understand the way that we experience things as human beings. So if you want to head over to the next video when you're ready, and I'll see you for that.